Welcome back to What Brought You Here Today. On today's episode, I sat down with Stephanie, a soon-to-be licensed mental health counselor in New York. I met Stephanie through the Your Human Therapist book club, and the two of us had such a great conversation about mental health, fertility, relationship expectations, and the mental load. Our conversation was one that I bet many of you listening can relate to, and I hope you all enjoy it. Let's settle in and dive into what brought you here today. Well, welcome back to What Brought You Here Today. I am joined today by Stephanie. She is a licensed mental health counselor and currently lives in New Jersey, but is practicing to get licensed in New York. You can correct me if I'm wrong when we jump into your bio, but Stephanie and I met through the book club that Your Human Therapist hosts, which I have been talking about on my social media. I've done a podcast episode with the Your Human Therapist, I guess, hosts, runners, owners, and then also with Lindsay V, who I also met through there. So I'm super excited to have you on. I'm super excited for this conversation. It sounds like we're going to have a lot to talk about around mental health, parenting, some things that you're passionate about. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, why don't you tell the listeners about yourself, kind of your background, what you're doing now, how you got there?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. I actually went to school for forensic mental health counseling. I thought that I was going to be a doctorate in criminal minds. That was,
Yep.
that was really when I think about you think about when did I make the decision that I was going to be a therapist? And so I started there and I got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and I started actually working in foster care. So I was a case manager in foster care for a couple of years, and I was doing that while I was getting my master's. And then once I got my master's, I actually transitioned into New York City's child welfare agency. And I worked there for a couple of years, probably, I think like 7 years, right before
Okay.
COVID, actually during the first year, up until the first year of COVID. And I worked there. I wasn't practicing. It was more of working with the contracted agencies that provide services to the community to keep children in their homes rather than being placed in foster care. So it's called prevention services. It was great. It was really great work. Um, I had already graduated with my master's, but then I had a baby the same year I graduated. So a couple months after, and then I said, well, I guess I'll never work on those clinical hours. 'Cause we were talking about earlier, right? You have to do 3,000 hours. And I said, I can't. There's no way. I have a baby. I have a full-time job. There's no way that I can do this. So that was put on hold, and it was on hold for 7 years. And then COVID happened and we were all working from home. My daughter was getting older. She was going to start, kindergarten. And then we were asked, okay, you guys got to start coming back into the office. And at that point, I said, I'm not ready to do that. And there were a lot of factors that went into it. And mainly it was around parenting and, being able to pick up my child and drop her off. And I just wanted to be there for her. So I decided to leave the job and decided to work on my hours and said, okay, this is probably the time to do it. The opportunity came up. I was able to partner with a group practice that we provide telehealth. So it really just made sense for me. And they had space for, post grad and post grad therapist. And I was able to get a supervisor. And I said, all right, let's do this. So I'm there now, but I also work in third party fertility. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I've never done anything like this. But as you know, and probably, maybe a lot of your listeners who are therapists, and, it's difficult to support a family on an income that's just, when you're working on your hours, it's really hard.
Mhm.
And so to figure something out. And so I looked for another job, got into this third party fertility service. So we help people find surrogates and egg donors and sperm donors. It's pretty interesting. So I've learned a lot. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at now.
Okay. With the third party fertility, are you working in a therapist capacity or is it more like a matchmaking capacity?
It's more of a matchmaking capacity.
Okay.
Uh, there's which actually has really, like, piqued my interest now on working on the mental health side of it,
Yeah.
uh, because it part of the matchmaking, they have to, the surrogates have to go through an evaluation, a psychological evaluation,
Mhm.
uh, and so that's kind of interesting, and I hope to, make my way over on that side. But right now, I'm staying put. I'm really just learning about the fertility industry. I've been there for over a year now. So I'm still pretty new. There's so many like ins and outs about fertility and, just surrogacy. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's so maybe small world that you mentioned that. So I am actually an egg donor 6 times.
My goodness. That's
Yeah. Um,
amazing.
and way back in like my early well, I guess like mid to late 20s, before I had my daughter but so I'm very familiar with kind of the process of the matchmaking and being selected and putting your bio together and going through the evaluation and then kind of the after parts of all of that. So that's so cool. I feel like it's such a growing it's becoming more talked about, like infertility and fertility treatments and just what women are going through and experiencing, and what a great opportunity to be part of that, and also from, like, having the therapist background, being able to offer that as a skill set too is really, really great. I know when I went through my process, it's, like, wildly different as the donor than it is to be on the receiving end, like, the one struggling with the infertility, but even everyone was always so supportive and kind and just holding your hand the whole way, and I think it's such a beautiful process, and I think I've talked about it on my social media, and I was on another podcast of a woman who does struggle with infertility, but just, like, the mental health components of it and what that process really does to your physical, emotional, mental health is really kind of mind-blowing, and I think we're just starting to understand that, so I really hope that you can kind of jump to the other side of the ship and help with some of the therapeutic side of it.
Yeah, definitely. There is a huge mental health component to it. I think, struggling with infertility it's tough, it's very tough for some and it takes a lot of acceptance. And so sometimes, we run into with intended parents, right? Those are the parents who are looking for surrogates or egg donors. The intended parents will have a hard time moving forward with a specific surrogate or egg donor. And it's really because they're having a hard time accepting that
Yeah.
this is the route that they have to go. So it's very interesting, definitely I'm still learning and hopefully I get to cross over and help on that side.
Is this your full-time work?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
what kind of work are you doing in your practice as a therapist?
So I work with a lot of couples, definitely a lot of couples. And also I mainly work with anxiety disorders. And, my passion is really maternal mental health as well. So I really work with, moms, whether it's first time moms or, three time, third time moms. But that's really where my passion is. And I think it's really, as I have evolved and become a mom, I think that's my passion has obviously evolved also, right? From being like, I want to be Dr. Reed on Criminal Minds to to like just really empowering mothers. I think going through it myself and just even when I think back to my years in foster care and and the mothers that I worked with then, I think about it now. I didn't have children back then. And so for me, I have more empathy now, I think, for that
Mhm.
population where it is hard. and if you don't like, it is tough out here,
Yeah,
you know, and if you don't have like any resources, any support, of course, I think, of course, you're going to struggle. I mean, I feel like we all struggle, and
right.
that's really the reality of it, right? And it's really about what your resources look like. What does your support look like? Because not having support, not having the financial support, those are like risk factors, right? And I saw a lot of that in foster care. Now I get it. And I'm like, this single mom had 3 kids. And like, of course she was having a hard time.
Right. I saw something the other day that the saying that takes a village, but it it takes a village to support the mother.
I posted that
Yeah. Oh,
too.
was that yours? Yeah. Or maybe I saw
I
it on
didn't
yours.
make it,
But
posted
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw I
Yes.
was like sup- it takes a village to support the mother, and then it kind of trickles down to the child, which I think is a great interpretation of it takes a village to raise a child, but
Right.
in reality, I don't think we always need someone to swoop in and take care of the kid. We need support for us as the
Mm.
parent, as the mom, as the dad, as the primary caregiver, whatever that role is, and really kind of, I think, breaking down the walls of like what is actually the barrier to getting you to be the best parent that you can be in your circumstances, because everybody's circumstance is different. And because of that, we can't all parent the same. Do you think what do you see mostly in your practice when working with moms or parents?
It's the lack of support. It's the lack of support. And, it is the mental load. I think, when I see moms, it is the lack of support. And when I see couples, a lot of the issue is that mental load that the primary caregiver carries, right? Because it could be the man, or whether it's same
Mhm.
sex, whatever it might be, but the primary caregiver, you're always carrying and this like mental load of,
Yeah.
I have to worry about, did I make the doctor's appointment? Did I turn in that form? Oh my goodness, what was the homework? Did she put it in her book bag? Even, whether they're eating, what they're eating. Right? I think you struggle and think, oh my God, I'm giving them chicken nuggets again. And you're worried about it again, and this is, my partner is like, whatever, give them chicken nuggets, they're eating. And and that's the mental load that I think about, that we are doing what we need to do, but we're also in our minds keeping track of what we're not doing that we think we should be doing.
Mhm.
So it's all the extra things that we feel and I feel like a lot of it is, society telling us like, you can't eat chicken nuggets every single day. So, right? So there's like the regular responsibility, the normal responsibility, I would say, of like, okay, feed your child, do this, take them to school, whatever. And then there's the other part of it where you're constantly thinking of the things you should be doing, or you're putting yourself down
Mhm.
because you think you should be doing them. The other partner, what I see at least, right, isn't worried about all those things, right? Because they rely on, okay, the primary caregiver is taking care of everything. I don't really need to worry. Things are
Right.
getting care of. It's pretty tough. But I was just thinking when you were talking about, it takes a village to raise a child, and really it's to help a mom. I was thinking about, when you have a baby and everybody's like, I want to come and see the baby and like hang out and like meet the baby. And it's like, I don't need you to meet the baby. I need you to help me. And, since I became a mom, like what I give for a baby shower gift has changed completely.
Mhm.
So instead of like, oh, like an actual gift, I'm like, okay, when you have the baby, here's an Uber Eats gift card, or, things that are going to be helpful to the
Yeah.
mom.
Practical.
Well, yeah. Yeah,
Not
not a
more
good
newborn size onesies.
that's I think diapers are always great, right? Like, yes.
100%.
But it's just It's just yeah, and it goes back to that, right? Like really thinking about what does a mom actually need help with?
Hmm.
What is this new mom or even, mom for the third time, what does she need help with? And what actually would help her be more at ease, right? So yeah, that's just something that came to mind. I was just thinking about that. It's like,
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think my gifts have also changed to reflect more of what the mom or the parents need or would enjoy. And even I think just like a simple Target gift card for when they emergently run out of diapers in the middle of the night. When
often.
you need, right? Or when you need to just like Amazon or DoorDash medicine because you can't leave because you're sick,
Mhm.
which has happened multiple times in my household. I'm like, how nice would it be to just like have a gift card in there loaded? I don't have to think about it. I can order it and be stress free during this already very difficult time. How do you, I will say from in my relationship, as like we're fairly balanced, but there is some, more default primary parenting. And I think that societally that always naturally falls on the female or like the more feminine partner in the relationship, just maybe by maternal instincts or whatever that is, whatever the case is there. And like you said, like always running through all of the things. Like this morning on my way to work, I knew that my daughter's bag was ready for daycare. Her lunch was packed. Everything was in there. And I was driving and I was like, but did I forget her lunch? It's like, no, I know I didn't. One, I know I didn't. But then I'm like, but did I forget to put this in her? And I'm just running through all of these things. And I'm like, does anyone else do this? I know all of my other mom friends do it because we talk about it. But I don't, in my partner's mind, I think he's like, the lunch is ready. It's in the back. We're done worried about we just got to get the bag to daycare. And then on to the next thing. Meanwhile, all day throughout the day, I'm thinking about all the things I need to still do at home, all the work I need to do at work, the mental load of all of the clients that I'm also seeing and what their needs are, and trying to balance all of that. How do you approach that in your sessions with your clients? Like, what is your kind of go to approach for how do we alleviate some of this mental load?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I always try to get whether it's, whether I'm seeing an individual, the primary caregiver, let's say, or the couple, I always talk about, all right, let's I love talking about getting pen and paper and some people are like, that's so formal. Let's just do it, right? Let's get a pen and paper and it's hard to put everything on paper, everything that's in your head, but even the practical stuff, right? Like the day-to-day things, let's write them down. What is it that you feel you're doing all the time? What do you feel you're doing all the time? And let's talk about if things need to be exchanged or where one person can do more than the other. But I really try to have, I always, especially the primary, I'll use me as an example, right? Like it's easy for me to say, I need you to do A, B, and C,
Mm.
right? And so you can be met with some resistance. I'm being told what to do, like resentment, all kinds of things, right? And I don't want that from my partner. I want my partner to say, okay, here's a list. I'll say, hey, here's the list. This is what we need to do. What do you think you can help with? And then he can pick, right? And so that's what I really try to tell my couples, like, come up with try to figure out everything that needs to get done and have a discussion, right? And don't assign to each other, but assign to yourself and figure out, okay, this is what I can take on and go from there.
Yeah.
Because that, right, we want to work through any resentments. We don't want to have, and that's often what happens, right? That's really what when not only when you feel like you're doing a lot, but then you are being told what to do is also not fun as an adult.
Yeah, I agree. I also feel for I don't do any work with couples, but I do work
I primarily work with kids, but I do have some moms or, parents on my caseload. And we talk a lot about also like priorities and like importance and anxiety. And, what bothers me doesn't necessarily bother my partner. So, like the laundry basket that's been sitting there with full of laundry for 5 days may bother me a great deal, but it doesn't bother my partner because it's maybe not a priority for them, right? Like and this that I feel like laundry is a very common theme in some of my sessions of like, especially when you have multiple children, there's a lot of clothes. I have one kid, she's 3, and she has a lot of clothes. I can't imagine having 2, 3, 4 kids, right?
Yeah.
And then sports and all of like the wardrobe changes. So I understand. But we talk about too, like dirty dishes in the sink or dirty kitchen. I grew up in a house that you did not leave dirty dishes in the sink. That is every day my mom was like, dishes in the dishwasher. And now as an adult, like, I can't handle this mess in the
Mhm.
kitchen. But I'm learning that is a me issue,
Yeah.
right? And I can't expect my partner to have the same response because that's not what they're worried about, you
Mhm.
know? And I feel like that's also a big theme of what's like going back to the list of like, who is this actually important to? And have you communicated your expectations around it?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, and a lot of it comes up to, I mean, this comes up all the time. I think it's great. And so sometimes a couple, one partner will say, well, she got upset all of a sudden, like she was just so angry, right? And it's, we'll use that example of I'm seeing the dishes and it's making me really upset. Whether or not you're upset at your partner or not, like it's just a feeling that you're getting that is uncomfortable that this is happening. And so, I try to really get at that, right? So that the other partner can express why they're upset, like what happens to them and something, you just like said it perfectly. This is what I'm used to. And whether it was you or Jose, Maria, Vanessa, whoever, it could have been anybody who left these dishes, it would have caused this reaction in me. And
100%.
and so, yeah, definitely when we talk about, okay, let's talk about the task. What is important to you? And when they're listing it, obviously, what's important to them obviously starts to come out in those lists. But I also do this thing where I have them fill out like their needs, their desires, and how they feel that they are meeting the other person's needs or like expectations. And I have them do it separately and then back. And it's always so different. And it's so interesting because, that's a lot of the issues that I see where it's like, but I'm doing this. And it's like, yeah, but that's not important to me. What is
Right.
important to me is this over here. And, I go through that with my partner, and I'll say, "No, but this is what's important to me." Like, "You are wondering why I am raging?" Like, "Because of this, please." And I have to say he's so sweet. He's like, he'll say, "Okay, well, I'll try harder." And then the next day he's like, "You see? I'm trying." Obviously, this was a conversation that just happened.
It's very fresh.
Yeah, yeah, very fresh in my mind. And so, yeah, right, there's this, and it happens, and I'm sure you see this too, right? Like a lot of the issues that we have in interpersonal relationships is a communication, right? And having and expecting the other person to really know what we want and or what we are expecting from them without telling them, right? And
Right.
so that's just wild, right? I always say that's and we all do it, right? Oh, they should know. No, how would they know? Did have you said it?
Right.
Right? No, but they should know because we're all different, right? We were all raised different. We're all used to different things. And that's my daughter's favorite line now too. She'll, when I'll say, but I'll say, look, but your brother likes it. She'll say, but we're different people, mom. I'm like, ah, you're right.
the pros and cons of being a therapist parent, right?
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I have to it's so crazy. It's definitely it's great. It's great. It's great to see that she is picking up on those things, but also sometimes I'm like, oh,
Yeah. I think
just
going back to the communicate oh, go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just saying, like, I get upset and I'm like, just try the broccoli, just do
Just
it.
take a little bite. Yeah. I think going back to the communication piece too, like we with the mental load sometimes think that we said something and we didn't, right? And there's this piece of I I know I told you this and maybe you did and the partner doesn't remember or maybe you just thought you did and you never did. And that happens to me frequently. I will work with adults who are like, "Well, I put it on the family calendar." But did you tell them to check the calendar? Did you tell them that did you even tell them that we are implementing a calendar? Do they even know this exists? Right? And I think a lot of maybe more type A personalities that's very common with. And I have a lot of maybe type A personalities on my caseload currently where it's just like we expect so much and then get mad when the expectations aren't met, but we're not communicating the expectation to begin with. Right? We're just expecting them to pick it up and know what needs to be done. And that's not the case because like you said, we're all different and we have different priorities and different importance. And, dishes in the sink bother me and not my husband because he's busy playing with our daughter, which is the priority.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm playing with my daughter and I'm like, God damn it, the kitchen's such a mess. I have to clean it because I can't be fully present then because it's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so
But
funny. For me, it's the opposite. Like, and most people always talk about like husbands, like leaving things everywhere. Like, I'm the husband in the routine. And, I can, but see, that's a conversation, right? Where he is
Mhm.
like, it's important for me to think for things to be neat. And for me, it's like, no, it's important for me to, if our kids need us, we're spending time with them, or worry about the kids first, and then we can worry about everything else in the nighttime. Um, but yeah, like it's all about different priorities and communicating that. I love the calendar thing because I think I've actually heard that. Well, I put it on the calendar. Did you tell them?
Yeah. I'm like, no. And now my husband will tell me, he's like, we're doing this. I'm like, I need you to write it on the calendar
Yeah.
because I have turned into the mom that has a calendar on the fridge, my paper planner, the calendar on my phone. Like,
Yes.
I need it everywhere because I don't know how to make space up here in my brain with everything else I'm trying to figure out. And I think, I don't know, have you figured out how to like lessen the mental load?
I have taken it, my new approach is that I am responsible for my mental load, right? And I have to be responsible. I have to take ownership that, I am not delegating, right? And so
Yeah.
I have really kind of stepped up in that department and said, I need you to do this, or I'll get emails from the school and I'll forward it to my husband and say, please take a look at this, or can you handle this? Because I think not that, yeah, it's the mental load is that I think we also fall into, well, I do it all the time anyways. Like I'm just gonna keep doing it, right? Like I'll take care of the school thing, I'll do this, I'll do that. I don't think that for some of us, we even think about, oh, I can pass this on to my partner, or I can pass this on to, I feel like sometimes we don't even think about it. And so that's what I mean. Like, okay, now if I'm overwhelmed, I have to take ownership of that and figure out how to be less overwhelmed, right? And so, you know, my husband would be like, "Oh, can you call the doctor's office? We need this." And I said, "No, I can't. Can you please call?"
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, right? It was just, it, it's speaking up and saying, hey, can you please do this? And, for the most part, I think the partner will say, okay, they might not be used to it, but really leaning on our support system, whether it's a partner or somebody else, definitely, right? Like recognizing I do have support for those that do, right? For some, they don't. Um, but if you do, delegate,
Yeah.
right? Hey, please, can you do this? We like to take ownership of everything too.
I think it goes back to because then we know it's going to get done the way we want it to get done.
That's
Right.
true.
And that's also a conversation I have all the time. Like, if you are going to delegate, you need to be prepared that it's not going to be how you want it done. And you have to be okay with that. Like, you can't have both,
Hmm.
right? You can't have it the way that you want it and also pass it off to somebody else because they're not you.
Yes. I actually have that conversation with my couples all the time.
Mhm.
Oh, it wasn't done it's not going to be done that way,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not going to be done the way that you do it. Can you be okay with that?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what's more important? Having some help, right? Or doing it all yourself. And, yeah. Like what's that saying? If you want it done right, do it yourself or something.
Yeah. Because you're the only one who can do it right,
Exactly.
which,
No, so true.
unless you like, I think even if you were to lay out like a 10-step plan of this is exactly how I want this done, it's still not going to be right. Partly because you're not the one doing it. And maybe that's the piece that it comes down to is that you're not doing it. You're not getting that sense of completion or satisfaction that you did the task that you wanted done. And also, they're still not you. They're probably going to skip steps 2, 4, 6, and 8 because they don't think they need to do that,
Yes. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I go through that too with my partner. He'll be like, "Well, I'll do it my way. You can't say anything." I'm like, "Okay." And that's, part of me is it's also the control, right? And
Mhm.
I have to recognize, okay, I have to let go of some of that control and say, "Okay," and he'll be like, I'll say, "Did you do it this way? Does it?" And he'll say, "Doesn't matter. It's done. It's
That's
completed." And
yeah.
I'll be uncomfortable for a little bit, but that's it.
But then you're on to the next thing,
Exactly.
right? Because there's always something floating around up there that needs to be done. How do you empower parents or mothers or fathers to delegate and to lighten the load?
I think it's more about highlighting their support and it- so that they're able to recognize, like, I do have help, right? I think first is, okay, recognizing there is support and that this person is not going to be upset at you or hate you or anything because you're asking for something, right? And really highlighting those relationships so that they can feel comfortable and say, you're right. I do have support. This person does love me, you know, and feeling confident in saying, I can ask for something and it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person for asking.
Mhm.
Uh, so it's really getting there of, you know, it's okay to ask. Getting them to feel confident in doing that, I think, is the most important thing.
Mhm.
Because then you feel, and also it's like once you get them there and they're able to do it, it's good. They feel good. Like I asked, it was well received, and now I feel empowered, right? Like I feel like I can do it again, and I don't have to carry this with me and feel resentful or angry or upset or anxious. I mean, even for me, same thing, right? Like going back to it, it's it's getting to that point where you feel confident that you will get the support you need. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's a difference too between, I think we get stuck in that we just can make demands, or that that everything we ask, when we ask for help, it comes across as a demand. Like, but that's not really the case. And I think for some of my clients, I've seen success in like, maybe they need a little more background of like, I am feeling overwhelmed by this and need your help.
Yes.
Not, I just need you to do the laundry because it's driving me crazy. Right? Like, I am actually overwhelmed with X, Y, and Z. Can you please help me with this?
Mhm.
Right? And we have partners for a reason. We are in partnerships for a reason. We aren't, do some of us have to do a lot of this alone? Yes, but default by nature, we're not meant to. And so how do we move past the sense that we're just making demands versus expressing our needs and how it's actually impacting us?
Mhm. Yeah, and I always try to highlight with couples, like especially at the very beginning, and highlighting the difference of, okay, if you start having conversations about how you're feeling, what needs to be done right now, right? We're all calm.
Mhm.
How does that look different than when you are at 100, overwhelmed, the lid is about to come off, the delivery is not well received.
Mhm.
And that understandably so, right? And so that's the difference where, you know, a lot of people will wait until that lid is about to come off. And so then what happens is, one's yelling, the other one's yelling, everybody's upset, nothing gets done. And then so there's no resolution. And so we fall into, oh, but if I bring it up, it's gonna be an issue.
Right.
It's like, it'll be an issue because you're waiting until, the lid is about to come off.
Mhm.
So how can we do that before? Let's start talking about that now before we get to that point where that lid is coming off. I think it's super important too because we automatically think, well, I have brought it up and it was an issue. Well, yeah, it probably was an
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. And I think then you continue going forward thinking it's going to be an issue because that's your last experience with it,
Yeah.
right? Our minds are so wild and want to hold on to, I think we want to believe that we want them to just be happy and look for the positive, but that's not the case, right? Oh, negative memories and experiences tend to have a bigger impact. So I think just keeping that in mind too when you are trying to navigate situations, that just because it happened once or twice or 100 times doesn't mean it's going to happen again, and you have to give someone the opportunity to react in a different way and respond in a different way. So,
Yeah.
do you
I
go ahead.
No, what I was gonna say is that, and I'm sure that you see this. I mean, every therapist probably sees this that, there's the client that comes in and they're having this issue with this other person. And, one of the things I always say, and I'm sure you see too, is, well, we cannot change the other person here, right? They're
Mhm.
not here, they're not with us. And the only thing that we can do is work on ourselves and change our thoughts and our behaviors. And and I always tell my clients, when you start doing that, that will automatically trigger a change in that other person
Yep.
because you're not reacting to them the same way. So when you're not
Right.
reacting the same way, that other person's like, hold on, this is different. How do I approach this? Right. And that's with everybody, like just any kind of relationships. But I always bring it up with couples too. And because if the other person's not going to make any changes, you can just worry about yourself, right?
Yes.
And what you can do, and automatically that'll change the game. That'll change the dynamic.
Yeah, that's great advice and a great way, a good reminder too. And I think for anybody, any adult or teenager, like you can't feel like teenagers, especially, like you can't control the other person, you know? You can only control yourself and your response and your reactions. We are just getting to our time limit, though. I have a couple final questions, but if no one knew what you did for the rest of your life, what would you do?
Oh my
If no
goodness.
one knew.
Honestly, I mean, not work related, right? Like I could do whatever I want.
Yeah,
I
if no one knew what you did for the rest of your life, what would you do?
wouldn't be that crazy. I would just want to be on a beach, just eating all the foods and, having a nice pina colada, just being alone, not alone. I love, obviously my family, but just having some quiet time. Or I could say I'm going to work and that'll be, I would go
To
into
the
this little
beach.
box. Yeah. I would go into this little bubble where nobody can see me and I could just lay there and do nothing all day. Yeah. I mean, nothing too crazy, honestly.
Yeah. I asked Lindsay this same question on the podcast that will come out in a couple weeks, and this one will come out in the middle of December, probably beginning of December. But our answers were so serious. Like, so they were like, we would do the same thing. And I think I must have been like on a tangent about something because I was like, I would work in politics and do more advocacy for mental health. But also I was like, that's very daunting and likely will never happen in my lifetime because I don't have the capacity for that. But I was like, oh, now like when I'm reading it again, I'm like, you know what? I would just sit in a chair in the mountains and read all day.
Yes, yes. If nobody was watching me, I wouldn't have the pressure of like, you need to
No,
be productive. No, I would not be productive at all.
no, I think I would read, sleep, go for walks, and eat. That's it.
Perfect. That actually sounds perfect.
Right? Now I got to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah, I know. When you figure it out, let me know.
I will. I'll tell everybody. Like, but you can't come to this spot because this is where I'm doing it.
Actually,
Okay, where can people find you? Do you have social media? Are you
yep.
want to share anything?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm on Instagram. I have my account is underscore therapy with Stephanie. And that's I'm just starting up my social media too. Talk about trying to find some time, right?
Yes.
Like that's where people can find me.
Great. I will link that in the show notes so that we have it. Is there any one final comment or any last piece of advice that you want to share?
I would say advocate for yourself. Yeah, all the time. And I think you mentioned this earlier where it doesn't have to, it's not when we're advocating for ourselves, it doesn't have to be confrontational, right? It's just saying like, I need this. This is what I want. These are my expectations. Like we are responsible for ourselves.
Mm.
And only we can make changes and what our life looks like.
Yeah, that's great advice. I feel like advocacy is number one
Yeah.
and just learning to be confident and comfortable in standing up for yourself and speaking up for yourself. So I love that piece of advice and what a great note to end on. I want to thank you for joining me. This was so fun and
Thanks
what a
for
great conversation we had. So thank you for taking time out of your day. Uh,
having
and I will link everything in the show notes.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Stephanie and I had such a great time talking about all things mental health related. If you are in New York and interested in scheduling with Stephanie or following her on social media, you can find the links in the show notes. As always, thank you for your support and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.